So the kindergarten odyssey continues to evolve.
Indeed.
There is more work for parents in kindergarten than there is for kids.
I just can't.
Is.
Kindergarten is a moment in my life that, for some odd reason, I was 5. I happen to remember well. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I remember my kindergarten teacher. I remember the classroom. I remember
yeah.
the first day of kindergarten. I remember what I wore. I remember all of it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I think you were one of those guys too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially now, because my daughter is in her kindergarten classroom is the one that's next to mine.
So you have you're actually living.
It's a PTSD moment. She's I'm walking the same stairs and halls, and it's freaking me out a little bit.
I think that's where it all starts, baby. I mean, it all goes well or wrong, starting with kindergarten.
It does, and but it's a lot of weird work now. Like I just remember, naps and games and blocks and puzzles, and now there's just there's books and homework, and we're doing homework with her, and there's stuff.
Yeah. I don't remember all of that. I remember it was a half a day.
Yeah.
It involved being forced to drink milk, which was horrible to me. I have no idea why I was forced to do that. And cookies. A lot of cookies. I remember a lot of cookies.
Yeah, no, none of that right now. In fact, we've got a rehearsal SAT scheduled for week after next. So.
Holy moly.
Yeah, I know. I know. They just keep scaling it back, man. It's crazy. Yeah, but we got her ready. She's gonna be good. She's gonna get a 1600. I'm sure of it. Yeah. And then if not, we got 13 years to work on it, right? Too funny.
That's so ridiculous.
Crazy.
That's so crazy.
So let's just dive right in this week. Not much happening in entertainment. We're all looking down at the awards season now. So you know what? Cover some classic movies. We got our giant bunch of classics right now, and there's some really great stuff that's come out this week. They have finally released on 4K Ultra HD the X-Men 3-film collection. Now, if you are not a fan of the Brett Ratner film, then I would say don't get this. Just get the first 2, X-Men and X2. It's the third one, X-Men The Last Stand, direct when Brett Ratner stepped in for Bryan Singer, that it just all kind of turned to a mess and eventually got right again. But boy, that third film is really just a dog. I actually think X2 is better than the original X-Men.
Oh, yes. Well, you're right. It is.
It is.
Yeah, far and away. Yeah. It's coherent, for one thing. The original X-Men, I'm sorry, that movie goes flat out goofy in the third act.
That's where it was. It kind of loses it at the end. It's great. It's great for about 90 minutes, and then it just kind of starts fumbling things.
Know where it is, and they figure, you know what, we'll fix it in the next movie, and they did.
And they did. But anyway, it's great. In case you forgot, there are a lot of people in the first 3 X-Men films that kind of went away later, Halle Berry being one of them. Mm-hmm. By the way, you remember she was once part of the X-Men. And
Rebecca Romaine.
Exactly.
Not Stamos, whatever.
Whatever she was. Rebecca Romaine.
At the time.
She was, before she was replaced by Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
So
perfect
weird.
replaces. But you know what? Rebecca Romaine and that little blue, with the little blue stickies.
Yeah.
Forget about it. Yeah, you're not going to top that.
Well, and X2 also has one of the coolest openings of any X-Men movie ever. One of the coolest. So, that right there in the White House and all that. That's just a fabulous sequence.
Dramatic.
So anyway, lots of good extras on here that you've probably already seen. The audio commentaries, the behind-the-scenes stuff. This isn't new. These aren't new extras, but being able to see the movies in 4K. Fox did a really good job. They did a really, really good job. This is CGI seems to take a leap every generation, and it's taken a leap even since what they were doing in these films. But it's still really top notch, and especially in 4K, and the audio is great. It's a lot of fun. So 4K 3-disc set for the or 3-film set on Ultra HD 4K from Fox. It's nice. It's slim. It's in a single keep case. You're definitely going to want to get this. Be great for the holidays, too. May even bring that one back.
The original Barbershop movie, believe it or not, was 2002.
Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that insane?
Unbelievable.
This movie, believe it or not, I mean, it has become iconic. A lot of folks in this movie, for one thing, obviously Ice Cube, Anthony Anderson, Cedric the Entertainer. Who now I think is just Cedric or something.
And I'm also going to go out on a limb and say Barbershop 2. Better than
Barbershop, yeah.
Because it has that great flashback stuff. Because they dressed up. I mean, it's really smart because Cedric is dressed up older than he actually is.
Yeah.
you're able to do those civil rights era flashbacks.
Yeah, and have him play his actual age.
And it's kind of Godfather 2-ish in a way, right?
Yeah,
You suddenly,
which was Tim Story new.
Yeah, of course. You get into this
Kevin Rodney Sullivan.
You do this flashback backstory that now makes the whole 2-film saga even richer, and you understand the characters better. And except he didn't have to hire Robert De Niro to play the young Cedric.
But between the two, of course, is Beauty Shop, Queen Latifah's movie, which is funny because Queen Latifah and all those girls are in Barbershop too.
Yeah.
So these movies all together now make up a little iconic, treasure trove of sort of iconic American films that are very, very, very funny. These special edition DVDs. Well, Barbershop is a special edition DVD with all sorts of special features on it, including audio commentaries by Tim Story and the producer. Beauty Shop is just a DVD with a few special features on it, too, including a featurette, and then Barbershop 2, also a special edition, again, with cast video commentaries from Cedric the Entertainer and a whole bunch of other people. Neat.
Kind of wish that Tim Story had not gone on to do that Fantastic Four movie. I know why he did.
Yeah.
Paycheck. You can't turn it down. Yeah. Marvel says, hey, here, we want to do Fantastic Four. Why would you not do that? I get it. But at the same time, I kind of wanted him to do more, go in the art film, more personal films.
It's an interesting thing, and he went for the money. People forget. People hate that movie, that Fantastic Four movie. Yeah. People forget that movie made a ridiculous amount of money,
and it's better than the reboot.
It's better than the reboot.
That reboot was dreadful.
So it's very strange sort of circumstance.
Yeah. So also on 4K, we got a couple of Punisher movies. Now, the Punisher has become quite a bit of a minor success on Netflix as a spin-off from Daredevil, and the Defenders universe, but we've had Punishers in the movies before, and we've got The Punisher and Punisher Warzone out on 4K Ultra HD. Different actors playing the Punisher. Really interesting stuff. Now, Thomas Jane plays the Punisher in The Punisher along with John Travolta. We're going to talk about Travolta again in a moment. Very unfortunate thing. The original Punisher, look, I'm not a huge fan of the Punisher to begin with.
Nah.
It wasn't until Daredevil brought him in that I was like, now I understand this character. And we've created I think it's Daredevil season 2, somewhere in the middle, where basically there's an entire episode of Daredevil and the Punisher on the roof having an existential conversation about life and the meaning of life and morality and all this stuff, and you just think that's kind of cool. That's what you can do on streaming at Netflix. You can put two guys. You can have an action series in which there's really no action and just these two heroes, or an anti-hero and a hero, sitting on a roof talking to each other for an episode, and I still want to see it.
The grand irony being that their perspectives being different, but it leaves them in the same place.
It does, and see, that's what made the writing so good. But in any case, that doesn't really find its way into the Thomas Jane Punisher, which is not a very good movie. Looks great. It's very dark, as you would expect. Jane kind of doesn't. I love Thomas Jane as an actor, but it's Jonathan Hensley is a really, really good director. There's an audio commentary with Hensley that's interesting, but for whatever reason, this just kind of misses the mark. I was not always a great fan of Warzone. Punisher Warzone, which stars Ray Stevenson as the Punisher. Different incarnation. I didn't particularly like his take until our good friend Luke Thompson. Luke is working on a think piece, which I will not preempt. I'm not going to steal any of his thunder, but he's working on a really interesting think piece and a very interesting take on the Punisher films and the Punisher character. And he argues that Punisher Warzone is a bit of a minor masterpiece. He might take away the word minor. Anyway, I'll repost that on our Facebook page and let everybody kind of get a gander at that when he's done with it. It's a very interesting idea, and he has forced me to sort of reconsider this film. So I'm not entirely yet convinced, but I want to read what he writes about it because, again, he's more schooled in this character than I am. But it is very different. Let's just say Punisher Warzone is a different Punisher from what you get with the Thomas Jane film. And these are all individual directors and writers who are using these characters as vehicles for different ideas. So it's all very interesting stuff.
Interesting stuff indeed. Uncle Drew.
Oh my gosh.
On 4K Ultra. You know what? This movie was just so stupid funny. Stupid preceding funny, by the way. And stupid meaning funny when it's stupid, and then it's actually funny when it's funny. Shaquille O'Neal and Chris Webber and a bunch of old NBA guys dressed up like old men who were formerly NBA guys, and they come in, with this goofy kid to play in this tournament, and it's just dumb. But it's funny, and it kind of gave a nice platform for these guys to do kind of what was going on in those barbershop movies that we talked about, from 18, almost 20 years ago now.
Look, I'm a sucker. I love Shaq.
Yeah.
We used to go to as many Laker games as we could possibly afford. I am so honored that I saw the big guy play.
Yeah, at his best.
Relatively close.
Yeah.
He is a philanthropist. He is a businessman. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He is a larger-than-life man and a larger-than-life personality. I will see him do anything because he doesn't take himself too seriously. Shaq in Uncle Drew is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
And everything else in this movie is actually quite a lot of fun, too.
Yeah.
It's a silly movie that just knows it's out there to have fun. But Shaq, done up like the old dude, I'm sorry. It's
fantastic.
That's it. I'm done.
It's funny.
I'm done.
A lot of neat stuff on this 4K Ultra DVD, deleted scenes, blah, blah, blah. Cool stuff.
Got another 4K, big 4K bonanza this week. We got a ton of them still. American Psycho, the uncut version, is out on 4K just in time for Halloween. Everyone else is kind of saying this movie is so prescient. It's aged really well. It's about now. It's about Me Too. No, it isn't. It's about a guy who kills women.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not in the worst possible way.
Who may or may not kill women, depends on how you read that movie.
Yeah, true. I mean, there's more going on here. This is really the whole movie is a bit of an allegory. It's an allegory about what cutthroat Wall Streeters do on a daily basis to each other, to investors, to the general public, to the economy. There's a certain mindset that views money not as a means to an end, barely an end in and of itself, but in this case, it's sport.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the meditation here. Is the movie as good as the book? I don't know. I never read the book. What sort of does blow me away looking back on this is that Reese Witherspoon's in this movie.
Yeah.
But
it was a controversial movie at the time.
Yeah.
Who directed that? Was it Mary Herron?
Yes, it was.
And it was a controversial movie at the time. And it had to do with the way people were reading it, whether or not you were reading it literally or not.
And also because a woman had directed it who had some credibility with I Shot Andy Warhol and her other films, as somebody who was able to capture a certain feminist sentiment. If this had been directed by a man, it would have been a different film, and it would have been ridiculed to no end.
Adrian Lyne might have been.
Exactly. So anyway, it is. Look, I mean, the movie's controversial. The book was controversial. Christian Bale is kind of weird in it. But
it's an interesting artifact. It doesn't hold up.
Yeah, I agree.
But it doesn't hold up at all. The Seagull, adaptation of the Chekhov. To me, beautifully rendered. I really, really love this. What I love most about it was Saoirse Ronan and Annette Bening. Playing opposite ends of the spectrum, Annette Bening obviously being the famous elderly actress married to the younger man who falls in love with Saoirse Ronan. And who will win this tug of war over this man, this dastardly and cunning older woman or this young woman, and Saoirse Ronan is just so mesmerizing in this film. Beautifully shot, beautifully rendered in just about every way. Corey Stoll too, man, that guy.
And it's funny because when Saoirse Ronan finally kind of when she burst onto the scene, I thought, okay, and it was, what was it, Atonement? Atonement was the one that got her the Oscar nomination.
Well, yeah. She's still a little girl then, but yeah.
And she's a little girl, and when you suddenly have an actress or an actor, but very often actresses in the case of these British period films, who sort of explodes with so much energy and so much vitality and gets an Oscar nomination is suddenly the next new thing. You get into, at least I do. I get into my head and I start thinking, okay, now where's her career going to go? How castable is she? Can she play off the British accent? Can she do other accents? Can she play American? Will she be able to age into something more interesting as an adult? What's she going to look like? What's her? You sort of start trying to invent a career for them. And I am the first person to say I am terrible at doing that because they never wind up being the actor that I think they're going to be. And she's another example. Like, she has gone on to do so many interesting things and to show such a range.
Oh, yeah.
That I never. I mean,
from Hannah, a little crazy action thing she did with Eric Bana.
Yeah.
To Lady Bird.
Years
ago. Brooklyn. The accent, not the accent.
Yeah.
Always luminous, and she's absolutely extraordinary in this version of the Seagull. Special features include a Q&A with them at the Tribeca Film Festival, and a Q&A with Annette Bening and director Michael Mayer.
So we got some stuff kind of Halloween-ish. I don't think we're going to be able to do a Halloween show this year because all this stuff is coming out so much earlier. We're not even. We're more than a month away from Halloween, and all the Halloween stuff's already coming out. So they're getting such a crazy jump on it. I think when we get closer to Halloween, we're not going to have any Halloween material left. So maybe we'll do a special show anyway, and just play scary sounds. So Michael Winner. The guy who directed Death Wish was a bit of a thing in the 70s. Michael Winner did a lot of genre films, and he was a solid craftsman at the time. And this is one that really has probably never been given its proper due. Scream for Help. Really, really interesting movie. Maybe one of his very, very best. And it's one of those, woman in jeopardy movies that has been criticized so much for, like Afraid of the Dark was one, right, with Audrey Hepburn and Alan Arkin. That was one of the first ones, and certainly Psycho kind of goes in that as well. Halloween, which we'll talk about again in this
reboot.
A woman being chased by a psycho, and people are like, that is so exploitative. It's reinforcing a stereotype. Well, unfortunately, it's a stereotype that is still too very real. Every day in the news, we see these things. So the question to me is always, is the movie exploiting that particular scenario, or does it have something interesting to say about it? Is it giving us insight that makes us more thoughtful about something that is an unfortunate daily reality? And I think Scream for Help does. I think Scream for Help is a lot smarter than anybody has ever given it credit for being. This movie was made in 1984, right kind of at the tail end of when Michael Winner's relevance was going away. But it is... It deals with a family situation. It's about a teenage girl who discovers that her stepfather is planning on killing her mother, and that makes it so much more interesting than what this otherwise could have been. Some of the performances are a little, overmodulated, but otherwise, performances are what the film needs. Rachel Kelly, David Brooks, Marie Masters. It's a good cast. Produced by executive Irwin Yablans, who's related to Frank Yablans, if you're keeping track of that. Written by Tom Holland, Savage Tom Holland, as he's otherwise known at the time. And Michael Winner does some really, really good job. That's from Scream Factory, and that'll get you ready for Halloween.
Love the title of this movie. This is the kind of movie that would have been really popular in the middle 90s. I had to review it for the show. Izzy Gets the Fuck Across Town. And I like it because, A, it's literally what happens in the movie.
It's also the title.
It's the title of the movie. Mackenzie Davis is this gal named Izzy. It's kind of like
How was this film handled at the time on radio and television? What did they, Izzy Gets the Blank Across Town? How did they review
That's
this?
what Larry said. When he introduced it on Film Week,
Week?
I remember that specifically. I remember that very specifically. I don't know. I don't know how they hurt themselves. So anyway, and she was kind of like sort of like a one-hit wonder, sort of a little pop girl. Maybe 10, 15 years ago with her sister, they had this hit song. And since then, she's still been sort of like, playing the circuit and doing the thing. The thing of it is, she's just an awful girl. She's just terrible, and everybody's just sick of her. And her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, is about to get married on the other side of town, and she's going to do everything she can and interrupt every life of every friend that she has in order to get them to help her get over there to that wedding that she is not invited to, so that she can ruin it and get her boyfriend back. And it's one of those movies, and again, in the middle 90s, this would have been this same movie, but it would have been a boy instead of a girl, it's sort of the Graduate-y. I suppose it's charming in a certain sort of way. There really is a lovely moment in it where they perform that hit that she and her sister had for that one moment. They had a little moment where they almost made it, and I loved it. It sort of wanders across our L.A., Wade and Mai's L.A., all through Silver Lake and all into Santa Monica. You just sort of see these places that we go and hang out, and it's one of those kind of movies. But if you don't actually live here, I don't suppose you'll give a damn about that. Audio commentary with the director and writer, sassy. If you like the sort of middle '90s Kevin Smith world of movie making, this lives in that zone.
Love it.
Only today.
Yeah, why not? Got a couple more from Scream Factory. One is the very underrated Straight Jacket. Now, this movie gets so maligned, and I think unfairly, because Joan Crawford is doing her very best self-parody here.
Yeah.
Straight Jacket was directed by William Castle, the legendary William Castle. And it was written by Robert Bloch, we should remember, who also wrote Psycho. So there's a lot of Psycho in this, and there's a lot of William Castle in this in terms of the exploitation sensibilities. But here's the deal. Straight Jacket is a really interesting film in the sense that it predates things like, it's obvious he's obviously still working out a lot of the same issues in Psycho, except he's projected it onto a female, onto a woman, and it's a more feminist take on the Psycho concept. But it's also still very much dealing with the same things. And you can project this forward into stuff like Halloween, Friday the 13th.
Rosemary's Baby, which, of course, he produced. People forget William Castle produced Rosemary's Baby.
Yes, he did. And the idea here is, so you've got Joan Crawford is her husband's sleeping with another woman. She catches them into bed together, and she whips out the axe and loses her mind and just chops them up into little bitty pieces in the bed, and goes away to a mental institution, not realizing that her daughter witnessed this and it scarred her and did a number on her. Which I think it was the third or fourth Friday the 13th movie that kind of does a little bit of that with Corey.
Oh, yeah.
Where Corey witnesses all this stuff, and then at the end he's like turning into the new Jason. Is the final chapter? I can't remember anyway. Corey Feldman. Is sort of that's very much inspired by what happens in this movie. Anyway, she gets out years later, moves in with her brother, and people are dying from axe murders again. Fill in the blanks. You can kind of figure out what's going on. Anyway, lots of extras on here. There's a new audio commentary with Steve Haberman and David Shaw, who are experts in this film and everything to do with it, and they will contextualize it. It's a really fun commentary. There's some vintage stuff on Joan Crawford that I'd never seen before, never heard of before. It's really, really fun, and stuff on the making of it. There's costume and makeup tests with Joan Crawford. There's a screen test that is hilarious. It's really a lot of fun. So Scream Factory did a great job digging up some really good stuff for that one. And I'm also going to defend their other release, their other kind of Halloween-y related release, which is Exorcist II: The Heretic. Now, there are a handful of guilty pleasures I have that are movies that are widely despised and reviled by a lot of people. And Exorcist II is one of them. As many people love The Exorcist, they will routinely say Exorcist II is the worst of the series. It's an abomination. It's one of the worst films ever made. I think Exorcist II is fun. I don't care what people say.
The Heretic.
Part of it is I'm a big fan and apologist for John Boorman. Even when John Boorman makes bad movies, they're interesting bad movies. Zardoz?
Yeah, Sean Connery. Yeah, with that diaper. That red diaper.
I'm okay with Zardoz. It's a weird, funky,
Excalibur is great, but it's also interesting.
I watched that the other day. Yeah. I turned it on. It's because it's on Filmstruck right now. Yeah. And I saw it, and it's going away soon. And I was like, I'm going to watch Excalibur right now. Even though I've got it down in the garage, I'm going to watch it again. And boy, did that film made such an impression on me, but it's amazing how much I'd forgotten. Yeah. It really is. I mean, that cast. Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren. Yeah. I mean, it's like you go through it. Liam Neeson. It's incredible how many people are in that movie. Yeah. Gabriel Byrne. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what an all-star cast they had.
Yeah.
These people all went on to think. Anyway, Exorcist II: The Heretic. It's completely out of its mind. It's absolutely bonkers. There are two cuts of the film here. The director's cut is 117 minutes. Makes marginally more sense than the shorter version. The shorter version is 102 minutes. And they did a great job restoring all of this. Boorman does a commentary on the director's cut. doesn't really make sense. He does try to justify the film a little bit. It's okay. He doesn't need to apologize for it. I'm going to tell him right now, John, don't apologize for this film. You have nothing to apologize for. The film's cool. You went pure gut, pure id, and you just put it out there. You weren't trying to do The Exorcist all over again. You're trying to do something of your own. You do your own take on it. There was no reason for The Exorcist to even have a sequel. No. It didn't need a sequel. But they had to try to go to that well one more time, and you took a swing at it, and it was a brave swing at just saying, let's just do this.
Yeah, it's not like he made they did that again. There's an Exorcist 3.
Yeah,
so so he's good. You're good, John.
Look, they even have a new they have a new interview with Linda Blair, which is interesting, and some other little tidbits on here. Look, man. This is a brave attempt to make a sequel to a film that didn't need a sequel and to do something original. Don't slam him for it. Exorcist II: The Heretic Collector's Edition from Scream Factory.
Yeah, John Borman directed. That's my phone. John Borman directed.
That was your watch.
Yeah, that's fancy. I'm fancy.
We got a big day today. There's a lot of stuff going on.
John Borman directed Deliverance, so
yeah,
he'll be fine. Nobody's gonna remember that. The Puppet Master. The Littlest Reich. So this is a reimagining, is what they call it, a reimagining of the 1989 Puppet Master film, which is a neat film within the context of the genre. I love these films because they would actually build things. The puppets were there, pre-CGI. Yep. This does that, too. They build all these little stupid puppets. It's about this guy who gets divorced, goes home, finds this puppet, in his house. He's going to take this puppet to a convention, sell it, try to make a few bucks. Puppet's been cursed puppet.
Oh, I hate cursed puppets.
And infects all the other puppets. Now we've got a bunch of Charles Band. They're so stupid. They're great, and it's funny. Thomas Lennon in this, and he's such a wry comedic sort of with that face and thing that he does. So it's crazy. It's kind of fun. I rather enjoy it. And it's from the producers. They say specifically on the box here of this 4K Ultra DVD of Bone Tomahawk and The Meg being that big stupid shark movie with Jason Statham and Bone Tomahawk, which is actually pretty good. A lot of special features on this thing. A few special features on this thing, including a little videotape featuring the cast. Then I have this absolutely horrible, really, really, really bad sorority kill movie called The Row. Like Sorority Row. This is called The Row. You got Layla Kent in this movie specifically. Layla Kent was a reality show star. I can't remember what show it was because I don't care. But she was. I know that for sure. And she's in this sort of a sorority kill movie. These pledges it's pledge week, and they're pledging these sororities and rushing and doing all this kind of stuff. Vanderpump Rules. That's what it was. Vanderpump Rules. And girls are getting killed. Girls are getting killed. Somebody's killing the girls. The kill scenes are terrible. The camera is too shaky. None of these people can act. This movie sucks. Director's commentary.
And we've got the original Halloween on 4K. So here's the thing: there's a new Halloween movie that just debuted to great reviews, by the way, at Toronto.
Yeah.
Which I didn't expect, but looking forward to it. We'll see how it is. It's amazing how this franchise continues to thrive.
How all franchises continue to thrive.
I know.
I'm going to stop talking about it. I'm over myself.
We had a Mad Max film get nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
That's just like decades after the fact.
I'm holding Solo over here. It's good. Anyway.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, the original Halloween finally gets the 4K treatment. Now, Halloween was the original low-budget slasher film that started it all. And we got to remember, Friday the 13th is a spinoff from Halloween. The idea, hey, they made a movie with a guy with a mask running around killing people. We can let's get a hockey mask.
Yeah,
that's even easier.
You don't need any. They realize you don't need any movie stars. You're going to kill all the kids in the movie.
Yeah,
and the guy under the mask can be damn near anybody.
Yeah, that's it. It's smart. That's the way they do it. By the way, a little bit of trivia. Do we remember what the mask is of?
I do.
Yeah.
Shall we tell them?
Yes, let's tell them.
You tell them.
It's a William Shatner Halloween mask painted white.
And melted
just a little bit.
Funny, he actually looks like the mask now.
It's true, right?
Yeah. It's like, it's his face. It became his face.
So I just love that. I love the fact that the Shat finds his way everywhere these days.
I love him.
So anyway, the original story of Michael Myers is actually psychologically really interesting. This is not just a relentless kill fest and exploitation film. There's a really interesting story here, and John Carpenter is not often given enough credit for that. the transfer is really interesting. They've gone out of their way to use everything that there is available in 4K to give the best possible look to a movie that didn't look that great originally, that was made with very little money, not the best photography, low light, sharp light. And so there's some tricks that are going on here with the 4K to actually wind up degrading the 4K a little bit. So it's 4K that could have ruined this film by showing you things that you should never have seen.
Right.
And this reminds me when
I say this all the time about 4K, about the extremely You
have to take the edge off a little bit sometimes. You can't push it all the way to what it's capable of. I remember once I saw a 2K projection at Warner Brothers, which was a demonstration at the time of Robin Hood, the original Robin Hood, Adventures of Robin Hood, Errol Flynn. And we had a discussion afterwards, and they said, look, we're doing 4K of everything. We master in 4K, we archive in 4K. Because you can always take it down. You want to go, but when we project it, like something like Robin Hood, you're going to project this in 2K, and we do have to take the edge off, because otherwise you're going to realize that they're chainmail, that those are just sweaters.
Yeah.
You're going to realize that those trees, it's paper mache.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff, those cinematographers at the time understood the limitations of the film, of the film stock.
What,
and they understood
what film would allow.
So I can get away with doing this, that, and the other thing. If you're a DP, if you're an art director, a set director, a production designer, costumer, you knew, all working together on the same crew, you knew what the film would and would not reveal. And now that we live in an era where we can go to the original negative and you can sharpen that stuff up to the point where you can reveal things that they didn't want to reveal, you've got to be responsible and honor their artistic vision.
You have to think about it in the first place.
You do.
And a lot of times when they first started doing this, it was just all about, it's going to be so sharp. And they it never even occurred to them. I think Vittorio Storaro wanted that to look like that.
The first Blu-ray of Casablanca was terrible because they took the grain out. They thought, hey, we can get rid of the grain. Awesome. No, we want the grain. It's supposed to be there, you dumbasses. Come on. So anyway, Halloween is a good example of people who understood that just because we have 4K, this movie should not be pushed all the way to what 4K is capable of doing.
By the way, let me say that this should apply to cinematography for films today in the first place. In other words, just because I just shot a movie, shot at 4K. I don't want that movie ever to be seen projected in 4K. Not ever. I want to make that movie look like it was shot on a film stock from about 1972.
There you go.
I want it to look like 5 easy pieces.
Yep.
Which means that and the 4K allows me to reduce and correct to that. But I don't ever want that movie to just live raw 4K.
No.
I don't want it to look like that.
No.
So that's
so bravo to the people over at Lionsgate for doing a really good job with Halloween on 4K. And good extras here, the audio commentary with John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis, a couple of featurettes. One of them is 25 years later. And then some, advertising stuff from TV and radio at the time, which is always really fun. The promo campaign for this movie at the time was really terrific. It's worth watching the TV spots and hearing the radio spots. We've also got Phantasm 3 and 4. Now, Phantasm 3 came 15 years after Phantasm 2 because Don Coscarelli realized, I'm really not going to have much of a career doing anything else. So I might as well. I've been trying to get other things going in 15 years. Hell with it. I'm the guy that made Phantasm. I'm going to make Phantasms until the day I die.
I'll be the Phantasm guy.
I'm just going to ride Phantasm as long as I can, as long as, the tall man lives. So anyway, there's getting the plot particulars of these movies are a little bit silly. There's audio commentary on both of these, and I'm going to say Phantasm 3 is actually a really interesting film. Phantasm 4 is kind of ridiculously stupid. It gets into, it changes the character of the tall man played by Angus Scrimm, who also has really he's never done anything else, has he?
No.
Angus Scrimm's just only ever been the Tom.
That's what he does.
So he kept Don Coscarelli employed, and Don Coscarelli kept him employed, and it worked out for them both.
That's what he does.
That's what he does. All right. So anyway, this gets into a whole weird space-time continuum thing that just it's a little bit too apocalyptic and a little bit too. I don't know. It's just not Phantasm. But Phantasm 3 is very much in the spirit of the first two. And it's got a good low budget vibe to it. So why not? Phantasm. Both of those from Welgo on Blu-ray. First time they've been available on Blu-ray. It's worth checking out.
I have a Australian science fiction film, kind of a low budget Australian science fiction film called The Occupation. There has been an alien invasion. There's a small town, not exactly in the outback, but a smallish town that musters together the forces to resist the alien invasion. This is all about that Aussie grit and gumption. And how it's going to be some small town in the Australian near outback that saves us all from a bunch of crazy aliens, and I suppose that's cool. I can go with that. Nevertheless, not a lot on this. The movie's kind of okay. A lot of CGI. I would have preferred it if they would have just put a bunch of guys in costumes. They do for a few, but a lot of CGI. Not exactly my thing. Blu-ray and DVD. Superfly.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah. Director X knocking off a new version of Superfly set out of Atlanta and Harlem in the present day.
I reviewed this on Film Week.
You reviewed it on Film Week. You rather liked it. I finally saw it, and I like it too.
I am surprised at how much I like it because our obvious impulse is, what are you possibly going to do? I remember when I first saw the billboard for this, I thought, what are you doing? You're taking a film, and we talked about this previously with the recent Blu-ray of the original Superfly, that you're talking about comparing Superfly to Shaft. One was independent, one was studio, one directed by father, one directed by the son, representing one is about a heroic cop figure, the other is about an anti-hero criminal. There's a really fascinating
dichotomy there. You can just see it.
And it belongs to a certain era. And my first thought was, okay, you're taking this film out of its context, out of its era, out of its family dynamic, out of its business dynamic of the film industry at the time, indie studio, and you're just remaking it. What possible point is there going to be to a remake of this film in the here and now? I don't get it. You're taking it away from its music. You're taking it.
It's even in a different city.
It's a different city. Like, you're literally removing this thing from everything that made the original film relevant. So what are you possibly going to hope to do with it? I walked in so cynical and so skeptical. And I was so impressed that they found a nugget in the film that I never really understood was there. They found something in the character that I'm not even sure the original film knew was there, but they were able to transform it and make it relevant in a really interesting way. It has a lot to say about ambition and wealth and morality and choices and family and crime
and culture.
Culture. And it takes minor characters from the original film and does some really interesting things with them, supporting characters. It changes them and it gives them a different, especially the cops, right? It does some really interesting stuff, and I'm not going to give any of it away, but they saw something in the original film that matters in the here and now, and I give them all the credit in the world.
Well, in the midst of the Me Too movement, there are a few things that they had to account for here. Yeah. There were things that went on in that original Superfly, who was a pimp. And his dynamic with women, his girlfriends, plural.
Yeah, which he still has girlfriends here.
Yeah, but these girlfriends know each other, and they think each other are cute. Yeah. And he is their boyfriend. Yeah. This works for us. But these are all sort of choices.
There's a shower scene.
Folks. Oh yeah. But everybody's dirty. They had to take a shower. So a lot of interesting things and interesting ways that they sort of account for all of that stuff in this movie. Digital DVD, not Blu-ray.
It is on Blu-ray. They were not able to send it to us on Blu-ray. Okay. Yeah.
You want to go there? Shall I?
Yeah, we got one more Halloween-y thing. Universal Classic Monsters, the complete 30-film collection. So, Universal was originally the brand that made monster movies. We all know that. If you know anything about film history, you know that that's what they did.
The Mummy, the werewolf guy,
Frankenstein, yada yada, all that stuff. So they have released all these films so many times. This is not the first or second.
For 20 years they've been releasing.
They've just been riding this for a long time. So this is allegedly the definitive finally the definitive collection, because it's not just all the original monster films. It's Dracula. I mean, come on, this is 30 films.
It is a gorgeous box.
It's a nice big.
It's not fancy.
There are 7 Blu-ray cases in here plus a booklet with 30 films. So it's going to take up some space on your shelf, but it's 30 films. But they really, really go over and above with this. You're not just getting Dracula and Frankenstein, Mummy, The Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein, Werewolf of London, the usual stuff. You're getting things like Son of Frankenstein, Dracula's Daughter, The Mummy's Hand, The Invisible Woman, The Mummy's Tomb, The Invisible Man's Revenge, House of Frankenstein, The Mummy's Curse, She-Wolf of London. I mean, it really, and eventually, as the curators over there at Universal, they're sitting there, they're thinking, yeah, why not? Okay, we'll just throw Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
I was gonna say.
Abbott and Costello meet the Invisible Man. Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy. They throw those on there too. So you got
which is really great, because you know what? Those could make up a set all by themselves.
Sure, they could. So you got it all 30 monstery movies, all jammed in here with documentaries. You even, as they have always included on every release of Dracula, you get the Spanish language version from 1931 that was shot back to back with it.
Yeah.
They shot on the same set, right?
Yeah.
They would shoot the one, and then they'd leave and go home, and then the Spanish crew would come in and they'd shoot, and it's really, and it's not,
and it's a better movie, by the way.
It's a better movie. I'm glad you said it. And lots of commentaries, and it's really fun. So, and the collectible booklet. However, most of these Blu-ray transfers are not necessarily better than what came before. They just decided to finally consolidate everything into a single set. It is possible that you might wind up with a copy of Revenge of the Creature that is flawed. If you do, there is a replacement program, and you just have to email USHE Consumer Relations at visionmediamgmt.com to get an updated disc. So just as a warning, if you get this and you wind up with one of the flawed manufacturing discs for The Creature Walks Among Us, it's not a very good movie. You'll never watch it anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're a completist, USHE for Universal Studios Home Entertainment, USHE Consumer Relations at Vision Media and then MGMT, abbreviation for management.com. And they'll send you a new disc. So not to worry, they're taking care of you.
Let's see. Got myself a little science fiction film here called Watch the Sky from Breaking Glass. It's a neat little family film. These kids go out to take some amateur video of some stuff in the sky, and they capture something that they're not supposed to capture. Before they know it, men in black and little green men, not actually little green men, but people who might be from outer space, in the sort of traditional way, just sort of with those heads and the eyes and that kind of stuff, come looking for them. And I got to tell you, as little neat family films go, this one sort of holds up. It's the kind of thing that you would have, watched on television on the Sci-Fi Channel or something like that. Cute little movie. Watch the Sky. Not much on it. Bonus feature: 1 photo gallery.
So we've got a bunch of interesting stuff from Arrow. And most of it Arrow releasing, but also the art film line Arrow Academy, which is a separate thing. We always have to point out Arrow Academy, really interesting Arrow Academy film. But the 5 regular ones from Arrow are just really great old exploitation schlocky films that all have a little bit of an extra special sheen to them. I am oddly compelled by, I don't want to say I like it, but I'm oddly compelled by the Pajama Girl case. Partly because it spells pajama with a Y, the French style, Pyjama. So it almost makes me want to pronounce it as the Pajama Girl case. And it starts to sound like Clouseau or something. Anyway, what's the correct way to pronounce giallo? We always have listeners that will write.
I always say giallo.
Yes, anyway. No, I always say giallo, and people correct me. No, it's giallo. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so
bad Italian horror movies.
This is a okay. So let me back up a little bit again. So as far as giallo films are concerned, this is a really, really strange, arty, unusual entry in the genre, as it were. The director Flavio Morgherini. Not one that I'm overly familiar with. I've seen a couple of his other films. They're usually terrible. All takes place in Australia, and the idea here is that they find there's a woman who's been killed. I won't tell you how she's been killed. It's rather ugly, but she's identifiable primarily because she was dressed in these pajamas, these yellow pajamas, and Ray Milland has to come out of retirement to try to employ all of his ace detective skills to somehow work backwards and solve this case. And where it goes is not necessarily very logical, which is weird because apparently there was a real life incident that inspired this, and they don't seem to hew very well closely to it. But it goes in places I never would have expected it to go. So I find this a really, really interesting movie. It's got a great score to it as well. It's at times very uncomfortable to watch, but it's really just so creatively done, more so than I would normally expect for this genre. It really stands apart. The Pajama Girl case and tons of extras on here, interviews and whatnot. It's just really, really fantastic. The Baby. That tells you right there. A movie called The Baby is going to be absolutely horrifying. The tagline, I love the tagline. What goes on in this nursery isn't for kids. So 1972, you're coming out of, Rosemary's Baby a few years earlier. So, everybody's afraid of babies. So why not? Let's just do another one. And it's a takeoff on that. But not in a really ridiculous. Well, okay. The joke here is that the baby in question is a 21-year-old man. So it's that's the twist. It's not literally. He's 21 years old, but he's a baby in his mind. And anyway, it's rather it's bizarre and weird and intentionally funny and unintentionally horrifying, or maybe it's the other way around. I can't keep track of it. Anyway, total psychedelic movie from the 1970s. Actually really more funny than anything else, directed by Ted Post, who kind of specialized in these particular films. Ted Post also did Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Magnum Force, right? So, I mean, he's kind of, he's a legit director who could make some really weird stuff. The last three here, Dario Argento's Deep Red is a horrible movie. Yeah. I'm gonna say it's out from Arrow. It's a cult film. A lot of people really like this. I am not a huge fan of Dario Argento. I think this is easily one of his worst films. I don't think this is at all
remake of Suspiria.
It's just
coming our way.
Oh, yes, that was also at Toronto.
Yeah.
But in the case of Deep Red, this is just it's too gory for me. It's just too bloody.
It's too gory.
It's just too self-conscious about all of its stuff it's doing. Day of the Jackal. Yeah. That's really cool. Day of the Jackal is a terrific film and directed in 1971 by Frederick Forsyth, based on the Frederick Forsyth bestseller, and beautifully directed by Fred Zinnemann, who of course did From Here to Eternity, and High Noon, and a lot of other great movies. So and it all basically is about the 1962. Starts with this attempt on the life of Charles de Gaulle, and from there it just goes into some really, really interesting political thriller directions that you just don't see coming. It's really a sharp film. Still works, still holds up, and largely, I would have to say, because of the Kenneth Ross screenplay. And Kenneth Ross is not a guy who's known far and wide for writing great screenplays. And then the last one is Horrors of Malformed Men, which is a romance. Isn't that weird? A title like that, you would think something other. No, this is by Teruo Ishii, who's what would be the Japanese equivalent of giallo, whatever it is. Yeah. So anyway, that's what
Starts
it is.
With the U.
Something.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a guy that basically made a lot of those. And this is a really twisted film, but it's really, really well done. And it's based on the writings of Edogawa Rampo, the famous genre writer in Japan, who based his name on Edgar Allan Poe. That's the thing. Edogawa Rampo is like a Japanese etymology twist on Edgar Allan Poe, not his original real name. But this film was actually really scandalous at the time. It's very, very well done. Not usually my genre. It's a little edgy for me in places where I wish it weren't edgy, but nonetheless, Teruo Ishii is a very skilled kind of exploitation genre director, and you know what? I mean, any movie about somebody who escapes from an asylum, you're already good. You're good to go. So that's the root of this movie. Horrors of Malformed Men. Lots of extras on here, including 2 commentaries with Japanese cinema experts Tom Mess and Mark Schilling. Very, very interesting. And then there's a video interview called Malformed Movies with Toei exploitation movie screenwriter Masahiro Kakefuda, and he gives you all the background on Toei and this genre and how these films were able to make money and how they got made, and it's pretty interesting.
Interesting stuff. Saving Faith is a faith-based film about the necessity to save a woman named Faith. Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's it.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, and it's a faith-based film. This is this woman. Her name is Faith. She runs a theater. Bank is going to foreclose. Her wacky uncle pulls together a bunch of his old friends who are in the music business to throw a charity concert to save Faith. Or her theater, anyway. Anyway, it's also obvious that it feels just like an anvil on your face. It's what it feels like. It's just all so And I'm like, really? We're gonna sit right on top of it, are we? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna sit right on top of it. And they do. And here comes Vince Gill and Amy Grant and the Gatlin brothers, all sort of face, and they perform these beautiful songs, and that's all lovely, and the music's nice, and okay,
all right. Good deal. The last one from Arrow. Here's the one. So here's Arrow Academy. The Arrow Academy film is The Hired Hand. If you've never seen The Hired Hand, I gotta highly recommend this. So The Hired Hand was Peter Fonda's directing debut. He had done Easy Rider. This was about 1971. And he was becoming an icon.
Yeah.
But he went to a genre that his father was known for, right? He went to a genre that Henry Fonda had known for. He went and made a Western for his directing debut, and it's a really interesting Western. It's one of those revisionist Westerns that we're getting at the end of the 60s and beginning of the 70s. And the history of Westerns is fascinating because it starts with all the big old shoot-'em-ups in the 30s and 40s, which are mostly serials, and just there's lots of cowboys and Indians and kind of the traditional thing. And then it gets into an interesting place in the 50s and 60s. Henry Hathaway and John Ford start giving us these really very existential, metaphysical Westerns that are sort of meditations on the American frontier and how it disappeared. And these are guys who were old enough to remember when the frontier was subsumed by the Industrial Revolution and cities, and suddenly it went away. And by the late 60s and the early 70s, we're getting Westerns that are symbolic. We're getting into that revisionist Western thing.
Oh, Little Big Man.
Yeah. And The Hired Hand is one of those, about a guy who basically abandons his family to go and just kind of, explore and maybe be a part of the wide open plains. And
which, of course, is a metaphor about his own dad.
Exactly. Oh, it is.
There's so much going on, man.
It's so much going on. And then he comes back to his family to basically get to know the daughter that he never knew and never really got to know, and to do right by his wife. And it's a fascinating story. It's beautifully made. It's sad that Peter Fonda never really kind of pushed his filmmaking career any further, because it could have been so interesting. And the thing is, this was shot by Vilmos Zsigmond just 6 years before he won his Oscar for Close Encounters. And Zsigmond is one of the all-time geniuses with natural light. He's right up.
Vilmos, of course, shot Easy Rider.
Yes, and he's just he's so brilliant in this, and it just looks so beautiful. Zsigmond, it's closer to what Zsigmond did for the Cimino film, Heaven Can Wait. Not Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate, thank you. Heaven's Gate, Zsigmond's shot that as well, and it's just the dust, the light comes through the dust. It's just beautiful.
That was, the scale was gigantic.
It's fantastic. So this feels more like that, and there's a great documentary on here that includes interviews with Zsigmond and Bruce Langhorne, who shot the score, and this deleted scenes and a whole lot of other really cool stuff on here, especially an audio recording of from 1971 when at the National Film Theater, when Warren Oates and Peter Fonda introduced the film. It's all really, really good. And you even get a reversible sleeve if you want to kind of change the artwork. So it's really wonderful. Arrow Academy, The Hired Hand. Good film.
Interesting. In case people don't remember or don't know, Easy Rider, also a Western, latter-day Western. Pay attention. It's a Western.
It so is, with Tony Basil in it.
Oh, yeah,
and she's naked in a
which is great, by the way.
Psycho sequence.
I got a Rama Mosley film here. I happen to know Rama Mosley, wonderful little director. Directed a movie called The Brass Teapot a few years ago. This is called Lost Child.
Yeah.
Sort of a horror thriller about a soldier comes home. And to his childhood home, he has PTSD. And he finds this boy wandering around in the woods, takes the boy in, weird kid.
Yeah.
The people who talk about how the kids, the kid is involved in some sort of evil forces that come out of the woods. So, it sort of roams around that territory. Beautiful look at movie. Not perfect by any means, but moody, well acted, okay. Special features include behind the scenes footage.
Groovy. And then John Travolta, we talked about earlier, because he was in one of the Punisher films. John Travolta made the horrible, horrible, dreadful mistake of wanting to play John Gotti in the movie Gotti. This thing lost its original distributor, and then it bounced around with its release dates. It's just not good. Just not good.
Yeah. At one point, it was said that this was the worst movie of the year, and then that Kevin Spacey movie came along, and they said that was the worst movie of the year.
This is just unfortunate. It's a well-intentioned biopic of John Gotti, but it winds up doing exactly what it never should have done, which is turning him into an icon and a hero, and nobody needs that. It doesn't mean to. It's just the way that it's made. It winds up doing that, and part of that is that Travolta's performance isn't very good. It's not modulated correctly. They never should have put such a familiar actor in the part. There's a lot to say about John Gotti, but it needs context, and this film simply doesn't have it. It's on Blu-ray and digital if you're interested, but I can't recommend this. This is just one of the most misbegotten films of the year.
Yeah, man, oh man, oh man. Timothy Chalamet, who of course made his wonderful debut in that film last year. The one with and all that kind of thing.
Anyway, Call Me by Your Name.
Call Me by Your Name. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Hot Summer Nights. I wish I liked this movie more than I did. But it's fairly standard at the end of the day. Set in the 80s, Cape Cod. Kid goes to Cape Cod to hang out with people who are really out of his class, and takes up selling weed to all the sort of rich people and some of the gangsters in the town. Gets in over his head, has a little love affair with a cute girl, and I don't know. It's all incredibly ordinary at the end of the day. So that's what I have to say about that. Special features. Including an audio commentary with the director and a featurette. Yeah.
And we've got a big fistful of Criterions this week. Here's where it starts. I got a couple from foreign directors, a Hollywood classic of old and a Hollywood classic of new. Let's get the foreign stuff out of the way here first. First of all, Olivier Assayas, who has slowly worked his way to becoming one of the most beloved directors in the world, made a film in 1994 called Cold Water. Now, it was released here under the French title L'eau froide, but Criterion is releasing it as Cold Water in its director-approved edition. 95 sizzling minutes. This is where it all really kind of begins, and it's semi-autobiographical, takes place in the 1970s when Assayas was growing up in Paris. And it's a story of just teen lovers and rebellion and a little bit kind of James Deany rebel without a cause stuff. It really is a very 1994 is a period I know very, very well in France. Yeah. I went. That was my third year at the Cannes Film Festival. And it captures a place and time, and it's beautifully made, and it's extremely well crafted. This is a 4K restoration, Blu-ray release, but originally restored on 4K. Supervised by Assayas. It includes a new interview with him, an interview with the cinematographer, 1994 French television program on the film. It's really, really terrific. Look, it's Criterion. You don't need me to recommend them. The other foreign one is much more well-known. Ingmar Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage, finally on Blu-ray, previously on DVD for a very, very long time. As with the DVD version, this includes both the nearly 3-hour-long theatrical version and all 5 hours of the original television miniseries in Sweden. You want to know why the Swedes are a depressed people?
Why is that?
Because watching 5 hours of a marriage falling apart is just almost too much to take.
Bergman.
It is just it's so Bergman. It's just Bergman above and beyond. Anyway, this was really devastating on television, and but it's you know what? It's still great. It's still great. And the performances are superb. It's basically watching two actors just absolutely kill it. Liv Ullmann and Erland Josephson, both of whom had worked with Bergman for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. It's like everyone is communicating with everyone else in this thing in just a beautiful, wonderful way. All the same original extras are here. Interviews from 2003. Peter Cowie doing an interview where he does comparisons between the two films, so you kind of understand where the TV version lets off and the movie picks up. It's wonderful. Then we've also got My Man Godfrey, directed by Gregory LaCava, a terrific 1936 Carole Lombard, William Powell screwball comedy that is one of the definitive of the period. It's just fast dialogue, smart performances. It goes a mile a minute. It's so much fun. It's 93 minutes. It blazes by in about 800 miles an hour. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's just one of the best scripts you will ever see. There's a 1938 Lux Radio Theater adaptation that is included in the extras. And there's a new program on here, a brand new program featuring jazz and film critic Gary Giddens. It's really fun. But here is what Criterion has given us as a grand gift this week. Tim, Tree of Life.
Ah, Mr. Malick.
Tree of Life is out. This is 2 Blu-rays. And Tim and I, we saw this film together. You and my wife and I. We all saw it at the DGA together. And I remember. I know you like to say that you're a big mush. I'm a big mush. I cry when I talk about things. You were weeping in the middle of this movie.
No,
I remember that.
That movie was it was profound in a number of ways, particularly the dynamic between Pitt and his son, between the boy and his father. That movie is the movie that made me wish my father was still alive. Yeah. So I could just tell him, dude, I love you too. Stop hitting me.
Well, this is basically an all new version of it. There is a it's secondary. This is you get the 139-minute film, of course, that won the Cannes Film Festival and was theatrically released. But there's also a new version of it with an additional 50 minutes of footage. That is basically a new version of the film. It's not an expanded film. It's a new take on this story and these characters that Malick just put together because he shoots more footage than any human being in history. And as we all know, there were a lot of performances that were cut out of his previous films. Thin Red Line has entire. You look at that and there are actors. Bill Pullman.
Yeah,
where's Bill Pullman?
He's not in the movie.
He's not in the movie anymore.
Is, yeah.
Cut him out. Adrian Brody was originally supposed to be the centerpiece of that movie, and he's almost a minor character in it. So Malick, this
moved
is just
arbitrarily to Jim Caviezel.
So that's what Malick does. But in any case, this is just absolutely wonderful. It is a fantastic transfer from 4K, and they say it was a digital restoration. Not really a restoration. The film's too recent to need to be restored. But there's a really great interview on here about the use of classical music in it with Alec Ross. And it's there's a 2011 documentary on it and some wonderful stuff, new interviews. It's just great. Tree of Life in 2 different versions from Criterion.
Shall I do a little Jess Franco?
Yeah,
a little these anyway.
Let's do Jess Franco.
Thank you for letting me do these, Jess Franco. Jess Franco makes movies about warrior barbarian chicks in bikinis, sort of leather, feather, fur bikinis, that kind of stuff. The first one here, Diamonds of Kilimanjaro. What can you say? Robert Forster is in this movie, which that tells you something about the way a career can go. But it's kind of neat. A group of adventurers head off to the sort of a primitive tribe in Africa to find the treasure of diamonds, and they're also looking for this beautiful white girl, and it says that specifically in the box, a beautiful white girl who was lost years ago and made the tribe's goddess, because that's what they do with white girls in Africa. They make them the goddess. Anyway, it's a lot of fun and completely insane. But it's Jess Franco. The other one is not actually directed by Jess. It was directed by, he goes in the name of James Garner, but he's actually an Italian director named Alain Payette. This too is is about women raised by a tribe of Amazons, and look, they're all the same. These movies doesn't really make any difference what they're about. The point of it is, it's going to be some really, really cute girls in tiny little furry bikinis running around, fighting like warriors and kicking ass and taking names.
I used to make fun of Jess Franco, and I can't do it anymore because you know what? He was gainfully employed for years and made more movies than almost anybody else who's ever worked in any industry. So I can't fault the man.
Made a movie every 20 minutes, pretty much all the same movie.
Can't fault him. I got a few from the Warner Archive collection here, one on DVD, R, and the other two on Blu-ray. They are all manufactured on demand. The Playboy and the Peasant is the one that's on DVD, R. This is an old MGM film based on a short story that is, this is late 30s. Late 30s period. It is, it's fine. It kind of dates a little bit. It's I don't want to say it's like the Prince and the Pauper, but it kind of is. It's sort of one of those, comparisons of class and the scullery maid and the all the people who have they sort of fulfill all these roles that we see in things like Downton Abbey and Upstairs Downstairs, and it meant to sort of give Depression era audiences something to look at, see themselves in, something to hope for. It's an okay film, based on the 1936 Austrian film Catherine the Last as well. So it's fine. You're watching this basically for just the kind of nostalgia of the period. The two Blu-rays are the ones I really, really want to talk about. The Naked and the Dead is an old Technicolor melodrama war film. What I love about this is they went and they took a chunk of the old poster, the original poster, and they built that onto the artwork for the cover. It's using and this is what was really interesting. They used to do this a lot at the time. So the title of the film plays into the tagline. The name of the film is The Naked and the Dead, but the tagline, which they adjust at the top, is the bigness and the boldness of the naked and the dead. It's fantastic. It's great.
That's clever.
It's so clever. It's really, really fantastic. This was an RKO film directed by Raoul Walsh, who, of course, did many great macho movies and war films. And it's based on a Norman Mailer novel. Screenplay by, let me point out, my old film school instructor, my first instructor in film school, co-wrote the screenplay, Terry Sanders, with his late brother Dennis. So Terry Sanders co-wrote this and co-adapted it. Terry would go on to win an Academy Award for a short film and has done many fine documentaries. But yeah, it's a little bit like the Big Red One. Raymond Massey and Cliff Robertson, disagreeing on how to run the platoon. All takes place during the war in the Pacific. And it's Aldo Ray and James Best. There's just a lot of great faces in here. L.Q. Jones, Richard Jekyll. It's a good film. It's a good film. It's a late 1950s film, and it's really, really solid. Raoul Walsh can do no wrong in my eyes. The Last Hunt with Robert Taylor and Stuart Granger. I have a funny Stuart Granger story as well. This is a Western. It's a perfectly serviceable Western, beautifully shot, wonderful, wonderful Technicolor Cinescope cinematography. Very nicely done. Robert Taylor, not necessarily my favorite actor. Stuart Granger. Here's my Stuart Granger story. So when I was an usher at the National Theater once, I remember Stuart Granger coming up to the manager of the theater and basically trying to get in free. and it was a very awkward conversation. The manager said, "Yes, how can I help you?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to come and see the movie," which was his way of saying, I'm a star. You're supposed to let me in free. You're supposed to give me privilege. And he said, "Well, you can buy a ticket, and then I can let you in ahead of the line." And I was like,
which is actually pretty nice.
Which is, I guess, pretty nice. But it's still, I don't know if I would have had the cojones to sort of, talk to Stuart Granger that way. I'm not sure the manager even knew who Stuart Granger was. Yeah. He knew he was somebody. But in any case, so there you go. This was all shot in Custer State Park in North Dakota, and it's a Western. What do you want? It's got all kinds of Native Americans played by people who aren't Native American, but it's perfectly enjoyable. It's just beautifully shot. It's not a great film, but it's really all about the photography, and the Blu-ray does a great job of it.
What are you gonna do? Solo, a Star Wars story, which is about 3/4 of a pretty good movie, 3/4 of a pretty good Western.
He ain't Harrison Ford.
But he's no Harrison Ford.
He's no Harrison Ford.
The weird thing is, all of these people are by measure actually physically smaller and less, not just imposing, but they physically don't have the stature of the people that they're playing.
Yeah.
So, Donnell Glover here playing Lando Calrissian, Billy Williams. Billy Williams like 6'2". Yeah. Played Gail Sayers and Brian. Donald Glover's like 5 feet tall or something. I don't know, whatever. But it's ridiculous. It's the same thing with Aaron. He's a perfectly nice guy and everything with the chin, the jaw, and all. He's like 5'10".
Yeah.
Harrison Ford's 6'4".
Yeah.
And you can feel the literal actual weight not there with these guys. And then there's the way they play it in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't like these guys. I love my but these characters here in this movie, I don't like this guy. None of these people would be friends with him. Chewbacca is okay. No.
You just put a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Here's kind of my fundamental problem with this is you're building this film around things that were hinted at in Star Wars previously. And what was fun when you hear them talking about all this stuff that happened, previously. Remember Chewie when we did this and that and the other thing? Oh yeah, the with the what's it run?
Yeah,
which becomes the centerpiece of this thing.
They're son and 2 parsecs or something.
Yeah, and that's fun because we fill that in with our imagination. It's a secondhand kind of shorthand that they're using with each other, and you're like, and you feel like they're kind of winking at you. Now we are literally filling in all the blanks.
Yeah.
So now I can't watch Star Wars and hear those references without thinking of this movie.
To think about something that's not particularly engaging in this movie.
I don't really appreciate that.
Yeah, didn't need it.
But the chase scene, the train
rocket kind of thing.
That's a great sequence.
Yeah.
That's a great sequence.
Ultra 4K HD Blu-ray, 8 deleted scenes, director's roundtable, becoming a droid, into all kinds of stuff on the Blu-ray for you to check out and get behind the movie if you happen to be a super fan of the Star Wars series.
From Flickr Alley, we have another great Blu-ray. It's a classic noir, The Man Who Cheated Himself. This is one of those great noirs that just kind of disappears because there are so many noirs that are loaded with stars. We tend to kind of focus on everything that has Bogart or Cagney or whoever it might be. But this is a really, really terrific one. Shot on location in San Francisco, and just lots of really, Lee J. Cobb just kills it as a homicide detective, and great twists and turns in this thing. This was one of those perfect Warner Brothers noirs from the late noir period in 1950. So it's getting a little bit less Chandler and a little more Kane, if that makes sense. It's a great movie. Wonderful restoration from the UCLA Film and Television Archives, part of the Film Noir Foundation series through Flickr Alley. You got to get it. It's got a bunch of extras on it as well, mostly trailers and featurettes, and then a souvenir booklet, but it's a really good Blu-ray.
Neat. As we approach Halloween, here's a pretty decent little movie, Found Footage 3D. This is a neat little horror film. I like the sort of conceit of this horror film. So you have these people, and what they're about to do is do the first found footage horror film, made from all 3D images, right?
Yep.
So it's a fake film, a found footage film shot on 3D. They hire this guy to shoot the behind the scenes of their making of this found footage film. So you got a found footage film with a guy making a documentary about the found footage film in 3D, right?
Yep.
In the guy's documentary, his behind the scenes documentary, an evil spirit starts to show up and kill the people making the found footage film. So you've got this sort of like ultra meta layered little thing going on here, a 3D film with found footage. And then this found footage, you got this guy who's killing the people making that film because this guy is making the behind the scenes. Anyway, it's kind of, it's like that. It's actually kind of fun. What's neat is this. 3D retro glasses are included in this Blu-ray pack. And it also says no 3D glasses are necessary to watch these films. So I think they give you the glasses until you don't actually need them. It's kind of neat. Commentary with the director, Stephen DiGennaro, and a couple of the producers. It is fun, though. Check it out. Found Footage 3D.
And then we got a couple of, a little more in the magical, supernatural realm, a couple of Blu-rays. Demi Moore's The Seventh Sign. I don't remember liking anything about this movie, and it was kind of in that late '80s moment when she, we're around Ghost at this time too, and she's got such star power she could do anything, and for some reason she decided to do this, and I don't know, it's one of those supernatural apocalypse movies that just doesn't really hang together. Carl Schultz directed it. I don't even remember who Carl Schultz was. Ted Field, who was one of the producers on it. Robert Court. I mean, a lot of people who were kind of figures from that time.
Yeah.
There's a few extras on here.
It has, in fact, oddly become something of a cult classic among people who like those sort of,
I remembered at the time.
Rosemary's Babies kind of things like that. What I liked about it was Demi Moore was cute as hell.
I was much more favorably inclined toward a movie that everyone else also hated, Hocus Pocus, which is out in an anniversary edition now. Look, the only thing I like about Hocus Pocus is this is a little bit like Charmed on television, except it has 3 actresses who are more experienced, 2 of them much less attractive.
Yeah.
And better actresses. Bette Midler.
Young Sarah Jessica Parker.
Young Sarah Jessica Parker, along with Bette Midler and Kathleen Najimy, all done up, just kind of they're just chewing the scenery as witches. This was a Disney film, and it was meant to be overboard and silly, and these women are trying to sort of get their youth back, casting spells, and whatever. It's fine. You're basically watching this for 3 actresses just chewing the scenery, and most of that is Bette Midler, because Bette Midler acts so infrequently at the time when this movie is made that she puts about 5 movies worth of performance into it. Anyway, this comes with a whole bunch of extras on it, mostly deleted scenes and trivia, and there's a cast and crew commentary, which is all kind of edited together, storyboards, and the original 1993 featurette. But it's still a fun film.
Yeah, they made another one. It was a Hocus Pocus 2.
Yeah,
that's how good that was. The X-Files, the complete 11th seasons, with 90 minutes of new content on Blu-ray, including a 25th year retrospective of the original series. So this is the 11th series, 11th season, 10 episodes, 3 discs, where they more or less try to reboot the series. Scully, Mulder. Still trying to find the truth, because the truth is still out there.
And it always will be.
It damn sure always will be, as long as they can make these movies. Yeah. I'll say this, Dana Scully looks great in this. And they're mostly looking for their son across these 10 episodes. Their son is out there. Somebody else is looking for their son. The same questions. There are a few moments across these 10 that are really, really funny. 2 or 3 episodes that really were interesting to me. 1 or 2 episodes which sort of tied some things up that went back to those earlier seasons and spoke to some stuff what I thought was pretty neat. All in all, was it necessary to do a complete 11th season of The X-Files? No, it was not. No, it was not. But there it is for you anyway. 90 minutes of new content on the Blu-ray.
So we got a couple from CBS and Paramount. The 4th season of NCIS New Orleans. Can't believe that's made it to a 4th season, but we were just talking about him today, weren't we, Tim?
Oh my goodness, yes, Scott Bakula. Yeah.
Scott Bakula.
I forgot about that one.
He just we were talking about all the shows. It was Scott Bakula. Just plug him into one show.
Quantum Leap, Enterprise. I forgot about this one with the New Orleans action.
You plug him into a show, and somehow it becomes viable. So we wanted to do a new NCIS. What TV actor has not worked in a minute and a half? Scott Bakula. Plug him in. Next thing you have a show. But you know what? It's just like all the rest of them, except it has New Orleans as a backdrop, and they do a lot of special New Orleans stuff in it. Anyway, 4th season, just like all the others. This is the one I don't get. Dynasty. They rebooted Dynasty. 22 episodes, season 1. With Grant Show playing Blake Harrington.
Yeah, Grant from the original Melrose Place.
So Grant's lost his looks a little bit, but he looks kind of like John Forsythe after he lost his looks.
Yeah.
So I guess we need this again. Do we? No, we don't. Okay. Anyway, doesn't really work. I was actually surprised this even existed when this showed up in the mail. I was like, they rebooted Dynasty?
Yeah,
How did I not know that?
Yeah. Well, they rebooted Dallas a few years ago.
Well, they extended it.
It wasn't a reboot.
It was the new generation, and then Larry Hagman had the temerity to go and die on it.
Yeah, and they were like, oh, he screwed it.
Yeah.
Larry. Gifted, the complete first season. I watched this season of Gifted. Gifted is includes characters from the X-Men universe, and generally speaking, it's about this family who finds out that their kids have mutant abilities. We're just beginning to find out that we live in a world where people have mutant abilities, and those organizations start to crop up, run by the government, who have to gather together these mutants. And this family, headed by a guy who runs one of those organizations, finds out that their two children have these abilities and have to go on the run. This was an okay series, arcing toward the young, I think, rather than toward more adult entertainment inclined superhero watchers. But I thought it was pretty cool. I rather enjoyed it. This is a 3-disc set with the entire complete first season.
So, Midsomer Murders, Series 20. So, if you really honestly need for me to describe what happens in Series 20 of Midsomer Murders, you're out of your mind. It's been on the air. 20 seasons of this thing. 6 mysteries here. It continues to be pretty much the same thing it's always been on Blu-ray. There's one I want to mention in particular, which is the mystery Send in the Clowns, which has evil clowns. Evil clowns. It's come to this after 20 years, with the circus comes to town and we got evil clowns. It's fantastic. And then also want to make quick mention, before we run out of time, of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, the complete 3rd season, which is great because it has a great old fabulous crossover episode with Flash and Supergirl and Arrow.
Yeah,
it's this epic. It's this epic one that it's really good. And
Legends of Tomorrow has got to be the dumbest among these series.
It's a dumb show, but that crossover is great. So that's terrific. And I guess with that, we are done. So, Mark, we should point out.
Yes.
Mark is coming back to town.
Yes.
Mark just got a job. It's his old job. He's been temporarily hired back at his old job for 3 months. So Mark is going to be in L.A. for 3 months, so we're going to have him guest on the show a few times.
Yep.
And we'll have more on that next week.